at HPD, Mr. Dixon.
If you don't mind, Brenda wanted to speak first.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I've been a civil rights activist since 2002, and my book is actually The Dirty South. instead of The
Dirty South. Okay.
I know.
Just reading from the.
I know. But I heard about Demetrie's case actually through gossip, and so I said, oh, okay. And then his father came to my home to talk to me about it. He was already in prison by then, and because people come to my house, you know, to talk about, see if I have any ideas or whatever. And so he, on several occasions, he brought me pieces of the transcript and different items, and so I read up on it and I studied it, and then I realized, okay, he's not guilty. So how did he get found guilty by a jury? He's not guilty. And so through my research, I ended up doing an article called Do Blue Lives Matter If You're Black? And oftentimes I don't think they do. I'm gonna read a portion of what I wrote. Demetrie, he was young, he had graduated college, and he had his whole life ahead of him. He had a degree in criminal justice, and at some point he decided to go work for the Houston Police Department, and his life was changed forever. After working almost 2 years without any problems, he was arrested. But his case is bizarre because nobody filed any police complaints against him. There was no alleged victim. The claim was that a male officer who was never named, he doesn't know who this officer was to this day, complained about him. And then Captain Rodriguez took to the streets searching for a complainant. And he ended up being given the name of a prostitute, and who was in jail at that time. And he visited the prostitute and came up with his star witness. She claimed on the stand that she was raped twice by Demetrie. Although she said that on both occasions, other people were with her. When she got in his car, no witness was brought to trial to back that up. Nothing was presented in court. No, supposedly the two instances happened at service stations. The service stations have video. No video was brought forth. And they plastered, before he was taken to trial, they plastered his photo all over the news and claimed he was a serial rapist. And so with that, you know, people get scared in the community when you say, oh, it's serial, they automatically think they're guilty. And so there should have been a change of venue, in my opinion. Demetrie was tried before a jury. At first, they came back a hung jury. And then the judge told them to go back and deliberate more. And several witnesses actually said that they saw the prosecutor go into the jury room twice. So when the jury came back out, they gave a verdict of guilty. It's not known why the Houston Police Department did this. I don't know. Demetrie doesn't know. I don't know, did somebody get mad at him? Or, I mean, it could have been anything. I know that police, sometimes they lie. As a matter of fact, you know, they're trained to lie. they're trained to tell suspects they have information that they don't really have, or tell them that they're gonna get 20 years or more if they don't take a plea bargain, so they can get a confession. If they lie to get a confession, some of them are gonna lie to get a conviction. Now Demetrie, he's left to pick up pieces he's working, but he's currently required to register as a sex offender for the rest of his life. This needs to be reversed. You know, as we know with the Innocence Project, we've had numerous, probably hundreds of black men in particular, that after spending years in prison were innocent. And I think that that's what happened to Demetrie. And, you know, but we struggle to find a way to get this reversed. It's hard once you've been convicted and you had an appeal for you to go back, be able to go back and change anything. But it shattered his life.
So, Demetrie, I mean, how long were you employed with HPD as an officer? Or how long were you in law enforcement, period?
I was employed with HPD for 2 years.
For 2 years, okay. Had you been in law enforcement?
I was with the department for 2 years.
How long had you been in law enforcement?
I was in the field for probably a year and a half.
Okay, all right. So overall, you were a member of law enforcement for 2 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what made you want to get into law enforcement?
Well, first of all, let me say thanks, Brenda. Thank the panel, each of you, for coming up here. I want to thank Kathy for giving me this opportunity to speak. This is actually my first time being able to speak out. So I may be a little angry, I may be a little upset, so just bear with me. But when I graduated high school in 2002, I pursued my career in 2006 at Prairie View University. I never thought about being a police officer at all, not once. They had a career day at Prairie View, and I remember telling a friend, nah, not HPD, too many deaths. I don't want to do that. That's not what I want to do. But eventually when I got out and I graduated, I moved here to Houston, and I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I worked 2 jobs. I worked at 24 Hour Fitness, and I also worked as a loss prevention officer for Target. So, you know, that kind of touched on my criminal justice background. So that's where I was starting to get into my field of study. So eventually what happened was I was what they call an APS. I was an asset protection specialist at Target. So when I left, can you hear me? Okay, there we go. Thank you. Thanks, Cheryl. So when I left Target, I was what you call an APS. It was APS. I was an asset protection specialist. In layman's terms, it's just a guy walking around apprehending shoplifters. So there wasn't any progress in that field. I wanted to eventually be an executive team lead, but the pay wasn't great. They didn't want to compensate me as far as doing the executive side and also doing the criminal justice side, the loss prevention side. So I decided to leave there. I went to the Harris County Jail. I actually worked in the Harris County Jail for about 5 months. I stayed there, ended up reading in the paper that the Houston Police Department had a $12,000 sign-on bonus. So in my mind, I was excited. Single man, no kids. So I wanted to take advantage of the opportunity. So, and it was 2008, went to the academy, graduated the academy in 2009. So that's where my career started, as far as, you know, your question goes. But I want to say this. Once I became an officer, you know, I was excited, you know, and I enjoyed my job as an officer. I really did. But sad to say that, yes, I was charged with 2 counts, 1 female prostitute, with sexual assault. I was devastated. I was investigated, and you know, I'll jump around because I know I don't have much time, because in actuality, I could probably talk to you guys for 2-3 days on my situation, but I'll jump around and kind of give you some points. But I was arrested and charged. I went to prison, and they gave me, actually it was 6 years. I ended up doing like 5. I got out on parole. I did 8 months on parole. So initially there was no DNA in my case, none at all. The 2 investigators on my case, I remember one name specifically, which was, his name was Sergeant Chambers. I gave them permission to come into my home, to my apartment, because they asked, would I sign permission for them to come in my apartment to look for any evidence. I had no problem with that, because I knew I was an innocent man. So they came to my house, came to my home. Now, when I was trained in the academy, when you're doing a thorough investigation, you're supposed to bag and tag whatever you take from the apartment or the house, whatever you investigate. These 2 gentlemen didn't do that. They took some HPD pants from my apartment, balled them up, put them in their car. And again, I'm speaking from the heart. So, and I'm telling you guys these things that were in court. These are statements. Everything is true. I can't make none of this up. So we get to court, and of course, I'm thinking to myself, how me as an officer, how can you charge me behind a prostitute that has no credibility? I don't get it. I don't understand. There were a lot of red flags in my case. They, in court, played this individual to be, they cleaned her up in court, and they claimed that she was now working, that she had a good job, and that she was doing better for herself. But at the end of the day, we continued to investigate. My father and my mom, they were, very, very inspirational in everything that has gone on within my situation, just as well as friends and family. And so I said that to say, it's like when, excuse me, but because I get so upset about the situation. But my mom and dad, and I know I'm skipping, but because and things are running in my mind, but my mom and dad spoke to Vivian King on the radio. I don't know if you guys seen it on YouTube, but it is on YouTube. My parents spoke to Vivian King. They had a meeting with her in regards to my situation. So if you have a chance or an opportunity, please go to YouTube and check that video out if you haven't. But the red flags in my case, they said that there were 12 officers now, physically watching me when I was out in the field. Now remember, I said 12 officers was physically supposedly watching me when I was in the field. Okay, we were in court, and they were asked, they said, well, so if it was 12 officers physically watching this officer, and you guys are claiming that he was sexually assaulting a woman at this time, then how in the heck why were you allowing this officer to sexually assault this woman, this individual? Why were you watching that? Why were you allowing that to happen? Why were you allowing it to transpire? So when they were asked afterwards, well, from the position that they say I was in, which was at a warehouse, they used the AVL data system, which is an automated vehicle locator on the patrol car. And it was stated that I went around the corner to the ATM machine. And Kathy remembers, and Brenda remembers, that they said that I went to the ATM, I got money out. Now, supposedly this particular prostitute was in the backseat of my patrol car. Now, video shows that there was no one in my backseat. But when they were asked in court, well, if you 12 officers were physically watching this guy, this officer, at this one location, he went around the corner, how many of you seen him go to the ATM? You know how many people said that they seen him? None. So you telling a lie in the court that you saying that 12 officers were watching me, but there wasn't 12 officers physically watching me if you didn't see me go around the corner. How could that be possible? So in order for them to make a case, they go and grab 2 other prostitutes, because my attorney, who we paid $50,000 to, who, again, I know I'm jumping around, went on 2-3 vacations during the process of my case. You know, to this day it pisses me off because he never ever done anything worth talking about in the court, and he was paid $50,000. So again, I mean, it was my first rodeo being on this side of it. There's a lot of things that I would do different as far as the attorney goes, as far as changing the venue, having another attorney from other city that could have possibly worked. But to say that he done nothing in my case. He did nothing but read off, basically, he read off this individual's criminal record. So that done nothing for me. They tried to use the AVL data system. I think it was Sergeant Cruz who got up on the stand and spoke on behalf of the AVL data system, but he was not an expert witness. Not at all. There was another attorney who worked on side of my attorney by the name of Bill Stradley. She worked on his name is Bill Stradley, my original attorney, but I don't recall the female attorney who actually worked on side of him. But what she done was pretty much, it was remarkable, but it wasn't enough. She, the AVL data system, it plots points. I know you guys may know about that. It merely plots points. And when she was asking Sergeant Cruz about these points that were plotted, that they were stating that I was here when I wasn't actually here, long story short, he didn't know how to answer or respond to any of the points that were stated or the dots that were stated from this AVL data system.
So you did 5 years out of the 6 that you were convicted for?
Yes, sir.
Correct?
I did 5.
And now, as you've been out and you did your probation, what are you seeking now? Are you seeking to do? I mean, and it was mentioned by Brenda earlier that she nor you know why they did this to you. Is there any sort of recourse or something that you're trying to do as far as like appealing your conviction or?
For me, man, it's about making it aware, getting it back out to where it can be heard. I want people to know about it. I mean, I need some type of help, you know, and I'm not afraid to say that. And I'm not afraid to say that. I just need some higher officials, although we have none that are sitting amongst us, but anybody with a higher voice. You know, like you guys talked about before, it's crazy because you have people that are of higher authority, but they're scared. They're scared to speak out because they're afraid of the repercussions.
As an officer in your 2 years in law enforcement, HPD, because we're talking about road cops as a backdrop of the conversation, did you ever find yourself feeling uncomfortable if you saw something, or did you see anything that maybe another officer did that you didn't feel that you could come forth with and share?
I'm gonna tell you what I felt uncomfortable about. And I was sharing this with Brenda. When I got out by myself and I was my own patrol, boss or whatever you want to say. When I got out alone, there were times where I'm primary on the call, and if I'm primary on the call, I'm going to the call to de-escalate the situation. Okay, so you have other officers that didn't look like me that came to the scene and would escalate the situation. So just like I was telling them, I took it upon myself to say, hey, I don't need you on my scene because that means I got to do extra paperwork. So I'll handle this myself and you can go on about your business. So if that was the reason I was targeted, then hey, that's what it was.
Can you think of maybe some instances whereby you may have felt like somebody was going to come after you?
On that, no. I can't really recall that. But like I said, those were those times where I felt like, man, look, I don't need you on my scene because you're not doing nothing but escalating the situation, to answer your question on that. I have another, what happened was before my attorney, let me get to that. Let me say this real quick. Well, before, when we got my attorney, he was smiles, and we get to the office, and it's, man, I seen your picture, and man, I know you didn't do this, I know you didn't commit this crime, but at the end of the day, after it was all said and done, I mean, to me, he wasn't doing nothing, just trying to get my money, because that's what ultimately happened. He done nothing for me. What he told me from the beginning wasn't true. I asked him to do a polygraph test, although we know it's not admissible in court. But I asked for one, and we never had one done. But unbeknownst to me, first time going through this situation, I didn't put the pressure on him. So after I was out, and I had to go through more sex classes when I got out, the first thing, and this is when I got out on parole. The first question that's asked in that particular class is, are you still in denial? And I told him, I said, man, I'm innocent. He said, well, yeah, you're in denial. I said, well, however you want to phrase it, yes, I'm innocent. So he said, well, what we have to do is we have to get you to do an instant offense polygraph test. I said, I don't have a problem with that. I've been trying to do a polygraph test. So they sent a polygrapher from Dallas. The polygrapher from Dallas, she came down, and I took the test and passed it the first time. And verbatim, from what the polygrapher told me, she said, wow. I said, well, why are you saying wow? She said, well, this test isn't normally passed the first time around. I asked her as soon as I was done, I said, ma'am, can I get a copy of this paperwork? She said, yeah, you should be able to get a copy from your parole officer. Well, at the time, I had what you would call a sit-in parole officer. And I asked him, I said, well, hey, can I get a copy of my polygraph test? He said, yeah, you should be able to get a copy. But that was him talking. He told me I had to wait for my original parole officer. So I took it to him as well, and I asked him, I said, well, hey, can I get a copy of my polygraph test because I passed it the first time? And he said, well, let me check. Well, of course, I stayed on him, and I kept asking him. I said, hey, man, is there anything back from a polygraph test? And eventually he tells me that, well, you have to get you an attorney, and you have to get it through TDC. So, I just kind of left it at that because I still been kind of working on, as far as financially getting together.
Right. Well, I appreciate you so much for sharing your story, and hope that you get the justice that you're seeking. I'd like to move on to another former HPD officer whose story I'm extremely familiar with, in that I brought her story to light through the Houston Forward Times, and she's going to talk about police whistleblowers and retaliation in HPD, as it's something that she personally has experienced. I'm talking about none other than Miss Kathy Swilly. And so, Kathy, I'd like to, first of all, have you share a little bit about your story with the audience. Yes.
He wasn't finished, I'm sorry.
Kathy wanted me to mention one more thing. I'm sorry. When I originally went into prison, what they do is you have to meet with the warden. And the warden asks you questions, kind of breaks down the rules and tells you everything that's going to transpire. Well, the warden read off my DEMS charges. Don't know if any of you are familiar. I know the panel will be, but the DEMS charges is supposed to be something that we were trained that was supposed to be very detailed. When you have a high-profile case like mine, it was supposed to be pretty detailed. I mean, I remember going through cases, simple cases, and they told me that you got to be more detailed in your DEMS charges. But long story short, the warden was like, "What is this? Your DEMS charges it's odd, it's short," and he was like, "Wow." And that was the first time that I heard about my DEMS charges. So I just wanted to say that, if anybody's out there that has access to maybe looking into that for me, I would highly appreciate it. But thank you.
Thank you. So going back to Kathy Swilly, is a 22-year former